guys, Keaton here with TechSmart, and today we're going to be reviewing the LG G3, the flagship that is going to remain in my pocket for pretty much everything it's really packing, from a Quad HD display to a laser autofocus, which is a really cool piece of technology. It's really packing a punch, and I've been impressed with it throughout the last few weeks that I've been using it on a daily basis. So I apologize for not showing my face for the last few weeks. I've actually been studying for final exams, which was last week, and now that that is all over and junior year is done because I hated it, let's go and dive into this review. And also, if I sound a bit funny, it's not because I'm sick, but I did get my braces off, and it's going to take a while for my voice and mouth to adapt. Yeah, so without further delay, let's go ahead and review the LG G3. So starting off with the hardware here, on the front of the device, it looks absolutely fantastic. We have a 5.5-inch display, and that is a Quad HD display, which is delicious, fantastic, and every other positive adjective out there to describe the display. That is what it is. We also have a minimal bezel, and it has a decent weight to it too. It doesn't feel too light, but it doesn't feel too heavy like the HTC M8 would be, at least just for me. It has a nice medium in between, and that is really expressed on the backing with the materials that LG did choose. On the front, we have a 2.1 megapixel front-facing camera and our LG logo, and towards the top of the device, we have our IR blaster, and towards the bottom, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack and our micro USB charging port. And towards the back, we have our laser autofocus, our 13 megapixel camera, which also features a dual LED flash. And also adding onto the back here, which is kind of a bit funky for some smartphones, we have our sleep wake switch and our volume rockers, which definitely feel a lot more tactile, and they have a different type of design to make it a little bit more easier to push and just use and interact with. So I like it there, and it is a big step up, at least for me, with the LG G2's buttons, which were kind of mushy and just kind of awkward to press. But now that LG has had that with the G Flex, the G2, and now the G3, I've kind of adapted to it, and it's one of those things that I am a big fan of to this day. And then for the speaker, which is also on the back, it is a 1-watt boost amp speaker, and it does sound pretty good despite being on the back of the smartphone. And of course, the biggest complaint that I have is it is featured on the back of the phone versus being on the front or even on the side to get you some better audio, but nonetheless, it does sound pretty great for the specifications that it does have. Hey guys, Keaton here with TechSmart, and today we're going to be talking about the iPhone 6. So this has really been the thing that everyone wants to know about. They want to know when the next iPhone's coming out and what type of speakers it will have. So diving on into specifications, it's featuring a quad-core 2.5 GHz Snapdragon 801 processor, 3 GB of RAM, the Adreno 330 GPU, a 3000 mAh battery, which really does shine throughout the device, Android 4.4.2 KitKat, and then we have the laser autofocus mechanism found on the camera, and we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit later. So as for software, LG has really stepped it up this year and made it a lot more pleasant than the previous year's skins found on their phones. Now, I'm one to come out and say I'm not a big fan of LG's skin on their Android phone. It just looks clunky and horrible, but this year it has kind of changed my mindset and made it a more enjoyable experience. And the only other manufacturer out there that really is sucking in this department would be Samsung with their TouchWiz, but that's completely for another video. So LG has really implemented a new GUI from the ground up, and they also feature this circular motif kind of style to the phone where all the icons are circular, and it reminds me a lot of iOS in the slightest bit because it kind of has a more polished and minimalist feel to it, at least throughout my experience. And I think what LG is doing is in the right direction, and they kind of gotten rid of the whole chromey aspects that the previous skin did have. And for me, the software is everything. I love hardware, I love specs, I'm a spec head, but if it can't really perform on the software end, what's the point in even owning a phone? So I think really what LG has done this year was in the proper direction, and they've really kicked some ass with not only the software, but the hardware as well. So for some new software features that LG is bringing to the table, one of them is Smart Notice, which is very reminiscent to Google Now. It adds some subtle features such as reminding you very subtly to go and delete applications that you're really not using, or just disable applications that you're not using for that specific day. It also will remind you to add specific phone numbers to contacts, and it really is just a smart interface that I think LG is kicking some serious tail with, and I really was a big fan of Smart Notice throughout my experience. So also there's a new feature called Smart Keyboard, which allows you to resize the keyboard in the settings, nothing really new in the Android space, and you can go ahead and select pre-selected words by swiping up, which is meant to help you type quicker and more efficiently, and that's kind of something we've seen come out on iOS 8 this previous week. And then you can also go ahead and drag left and right on the spacebar to act as a cursor, kind of a cool new feature. And just overall, I was able to type a little bit quicker on the keyboard, and the cursor feature found on the spacebar was very, very, very efficient, and just was kind of one of those new features that I saw in the space. So of course, one of the biggest things within the LG software side of things is knock code, which is a different approach to keeping your device secure. So instead of the traditional alphabetical password or numerical password, or doing the swiping thing, we're going to call it swipe to unlock, because I don't know the name right now. Knock code allows you 4 quadrants, and you tap on them or you knock on them. It's very simple, and there's over 80,000 combinations, and it's kind of fun because when the display is off on the phone, you just go ahead and knock on the said quadrants for your password, and it will go ahead and unlock your phone, and your phone doesn't even need to be powered on. So that's always a really cool feature. And adding on to that is guest mode. What guest mode allows you to do is hand your device off to a buddy or a kid if you have kids. Not me right now. And you can select for them to be able to use certain applications. So for example, if you don't want them diving into your text messages, you can restrict that off and only allow them access to the camera or just gallery to go and check out some of your photos. And they of course have their own knock code, so when that is enabled, it will put them into guest mode, and then when your knock code is enabled, or whatever password you choose, it will go ahead and switch you back to the full-fledged device, giving you access to whatever you really want in the phone. So transitioning on to one of the biggest selling points of the smartphone, it's the 5.5-inch Quad HD IPS LCD. It looks marvelous. It features a resolution of 2560 by 1440 and boasts a pixels per inch, get ready for this, of 538. This display is fantastic. The contrast is spot on. It's not too oversaturated in my testing, and I just fell in love with this display. It's by far the best I've used on an Android device, or any device for that matter, and I just constantly felt myself going back to that display and just wanting to use it and spend as much time as I could on the display because it was just that fantastic, and the experience with it was just superb. So when this does come out to the United States markets at the end of June, go to your local carrier store and just play around with this device, because you're going to notice how great and beautiful this display truly is. So another big selling point on this device is the camera. So it boasts a 13 megapixel camera, of course, on the rear, features 4K video and optical image stabilization, and a cool new feature called laser autofocus. So we did a kind of segment on this in our top 5 features video found on the LG G3, and that link can be found right below that like button. But what laser autofocus does is it calculates the distance between your subject and the phone and just snaps a quick picture whilst keeping everything in frame and in focus, and it's just a great feature all around. It can snap it at 280 milliseconds, and to put that in perspective, when we blink, yes, when we blink, it is 350 milliseconds, so that is how quickly it's going off, and it's one of the faster shutters out there that I've used. And for me, I'm always taking pictures on the go, and this phone really did adapt to my life pretty well, because in some atmospheres, you're only going to get a split second to take that perfect photo, and this phone can definitely be able to capture those specific photos while you're out on the field. So for photo quality, it is definitely there on this phone. The colors are nice and vibrant. The photos look pretty good for the most part, but one thing I did notice when taking these quick pictures with the laser autofocus is noise and a higher ISO. So in order to compensate for the quick shutter, the ISO tends to get kicked up a little bit, and you can definitely notice some noise in the pictures. Now this isn't a downside for me, but it is one of those things you will notice in your photos, but keep in mind this is just nitpicking, and overall your photos are going to look fantastic. So for video quality, it's pretty great just using the normal settings. Obviously 4K video does not have optical image stabilization, so if you're going to use it, go ahead and stabilize it. And the slow motion video at 720p just looks bad. But overall, I just felt the camera was pretty nice on here. It doesn't have too many confusing overlays. It's pretty simple to use, and there's no manual controls. So if that's one thing you really do want, then that is something you might want to consider when buying this phone. So moving to battery life, it features a 3000 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty solid for a phone like this. Keep in mind the Samsung Galaxy S5 does feature a 2800 milliamp hour battery, and that's just to put into perspective. Now this phone, gets a fantastic battery life. I was definitely satisfied, and I was able to achieve around 10 to 11 hours of battery life using this phone pretty heavily, which is fantastic because I'm not one that likes to hold back on the performance of a phone just so I can compensate the battery life. If I'm going to use a phone, I'm going to use it as hard as I can to get whatever I need done and not really have to hold back. And if you are in a pinch, and a lot of manufacturers are including this, there's battery power saving mode, which you can go ahead and flip on in the settings to conserve some battery life. And it really is surprising how much battery life you can conserve off just a few percent, because it does convert a lot of the internals on the inside of the phone. But all in all here, I was impressed with the battery life, and it's one of those things I look for on a smartphone. So overall here, I'm impressed with the LG G3, and it's definitely going to take a spot in my top 5 smartphones of 2014, and we're only about halfway through at the time of recording this video. And I think the biggest things I like about the phone is the feel. Hardware is definitely a big thing for me. The specifications, which are banging, including that 5.5-inch Quad HD display, and the camera, and battery life too. They all are perfectly perfected in a nice package, and I just found myself using this phone more than I initially intended to, and I think the feeling and battery life and just the quick camera just keeps drawing me back to this phone, and I know a lot of you guys are going to notice that too. And to add to all of this, you're getting micro SD expansion and a removable back cover, which is pretty great because you can go and hot swap batteries on the fly and add more storage if the initial storage isn't enough for you. So all in all here, guys, this phone is fantastic, and it's going to remain in my pocket until I can find a flaw. And tacking onto that, the software experience has really stepped up from previous years, and it seems that LG is taking their devices in the necessary direction to compete with bigger manufacturers such as Samsung and HTC in the space. So pricing and availability can be found in the description below, because these prices are fluctuating depending on when you are watching this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this review of the LG G3, one of my favorite smartphones to come in 2014. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop me a big thumbs up down below, as it really helps the channel out a lot, and it lets me know you guys want more LG G3 content like this. Also, go ahead and drop me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the LG G3. Is it a phone you guys are going to pick up, or are you going to hold out for a device that we'll be seeing later this year, such as the iPhone 6 or some other cool phones that Samsung or HTC has in store? Finally, go and subscribe to the channel to be notified when a brand new cool review like this is available, because trust me guys, we got a lot more coming in 2014. Thank you guys once again, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.